Hi everybody, and welcome to my mob farms tutorial. So I'm going to be running a few tutorials which are basically going to be showing mob spawners, both the ones that you find in world and also the ones that you can create yourself, kind of the ambient mob spawners. Now I'll be showing you methods for zombies and skeletons. Don't worry, they will not be escaping like that one just did. This one is just purely for show. I'll also be covering spiders in a completely separate tutorial. Spiders, I think, are probably by far the hardest mob to control, just simply because of their climb mechanic. But after lots of testing, you can find ways around things and certain ways of doing things that will make your build a lot easier. I'll show you this build that I've got here, which includes a 14 drop, which basically brings the spider down to 1 health. And then this little area here, which essentially pushes them along and then up into there. And then I will bring you another tutorial which will cover blaze. Now this is, I think, by far one of my favorite spawners. This works 100%. I have one of these in my survival world, and as you can see, it's just fully automatic. This will actually also work on skeletons and zombies, but as you can tell, it's a little bit more of an expensive build just because of the redstone and the fact that you have to go into the nether and find a nether fortress before you can build it. But again, all these things will be covered in a separate tutorial. So I'm going to run by basically the basics of each spawner, and then I will do a more advanced video which covers basically more advanced techniques that I use in my builds. As you can see here, this is just an ambient spawner. I will cover this one again separately. This one's a bit more of an arduous build, and the spawns can be a little bit temperamental just because of the way that the mobs have been updated in the Bedrock edition. But again, we can find ways around things, and that's simply there for gunpowder. I have other spawners that I can gain all my bits and pieces from. So for this one, I'm going to show you the basic spawner for the zombies and the skeletons. Very, very straightforward, probably the easiest one that you can build. But a couple of things to note before we start. Firstly, distance from your spawner. Now, as you saw there, if I move in a little bit closer to it, the spawner comes on. So you have to remain within 16 blocks of your spawner in order for it to remain active. So 16 blocks in any direction, but you have to remain within that 16 blocks, otherwise essentially your spawner will just turn off. So always bear that in mind when you're building. And you're putting in essentially the place where you're going to kill them, or a little stand area. For this basic build at the beginning, it's not complicated at all. Essentially you're just going to give yourself a little platform to stand on. The platform you're standing on isn't on the same floor that you're going to be doing the killing, but at the beginning that's not really too much of an issue. Okay, so let's get into the build. So you've found your spawner, whether it be zombie or whether it be skeleton. First priority, light it. Now obviously I'm out in the daylight, I didn't really need to light this, but I'm lighting it just to show you exactly what you're going to do. Otherwise you're just going to have stuff spawning on you while you're trying to build it. That's not going to be much fun for you. So you want to leave a 2-block gap under it, and you want to go out in 5 blocks in every direction. And then you want to make that basically a square. So it now should be 11 by 11 when you finish. Just like so. Okay, next thing we want to do is add some walls. Obviously you can use whatever colours you want for this. I'm having to use the darker blocks just because I'm demonstrating during the daytime and the mobs won't spawn if I don't. So essentially I've gone 5 blocks up. I place a glass block on top of the spawner because mobs can't spawn on top of glass or half slabs. So by placing that there, it just simply stops any zombies from being able to spawn directly on top of the spawner and just kind of lurk. And next we're adding the roof. Okay, so you've just got yourself a little room now. And you notice from that centre block there's 4 out in every direction. So that's not including the centre block. Okay, so next thing we want to do is we want to make ourselves a little hole around that. Like so. Now we leave the center pillar in for a reason. This simply helps with, firstly, it keeps the zombies from, because some mobs have got a tendency when they're falling they can actually move themselves ever slightly to one side or the other. But we put the pillar in just for this reason, because if you try placing water, as you see there, it just flows into the center and drops down, and we don't want that. We want the water just to stop at this edge. So if you put a switch on all of the 4 sides here, now that's going to stop the water from going in those 4 sides, but the 4 corners are still going to have water run into them. So what you then need to do is place another 4 switches exactly where I'm placing here, and then another 2 on the other side. So that now means whenever you place water, the switches basically act as a block. So as you'll see here, the water doesn't flow off and down. So then with 4 buckets of water, you fill each of the 4 corners. And that now means that anything that spawns in this room will automatically hit the flow of water and get pushed down to here. Nice and simple. It's such a compact build as well, so you don't need much space for this. The reason that we're going to put a drop in at the bottom is that we want to bring them down to essentially 1 health, or as close to 1 health as we can. Now I'm not sure if something has changed in the update, but sometimes the drop can seem to vary between 22 and 23 blocks. But that means that when you do come to do the killing, you'll notice you only have to hit them once or twice in order to kill them, rather than a few times in order to do it. So as you saw there, remove the torches, and the zombies just went exactly where I needed them to. So now what we need to do is create ourselves a little tunnel down to where we actually want to do our killing. Now you're probably going to be doing this underground because that's where your spawners are, so you won't need to build this tunnel as I'm doing here. You'll probably just need to tunnel down. But what I have a tendency of doing, and I would recommend this to anyone that's building, give yourself space. So that's it, I've built my tunnel down, I've put a kill floor at the bottom. Now I know that my spawner is on this level here. So as I mentioned before, I've made the kill floor 2 lower than I actually need it to be. So the floor that I'm going to stand on is 2 lower than the floor that I actually want them to land on. And the reason that I've done that is because I want to put hoppers in and a half slab on top of that. Hoppers, you don't need to do this, you can just use standard blocks with a half slab. But if you put hoppers in, essentially you've then got a collection system for all of the zombie flesh or the bones or arrows or anything along those lines that you're kind of collecting. So put your chest in place and crouch when you put your hoppers in. You want to put the first one facing the chest and then each one so it faces into the one that you've just laid. You have to be crouching it in order to do this. and then you want to come back to the top and you want to lay a hopper on top of that one facing down. So you essentially want it to be facing down into that one, and then each of the ones you lay after that, you essentially want it to be facing into the one that you've just put in, like I've just done there. And then on top of that you want to add half slabs. Now the half slabs are only in place because of the baby zombies. Normal zombies or skeletons wouldn't be able to get out of there. But now essentially anything that drops down into that zone there will fall through and land in the hoppers. So I've made myself a little step to stand on, which is within the distance I mentioned before. You have to stay within that 16 blocks. And as the zombies spawn, they get pushed into the tunnel and drop down into your little kill zone here, ready for you to kill. As I said, this is the most basic of spawners that you can build. There are a lot more advanced mechanics that you can use, which I will be covering in other tutorials. For methods on moving mobs, please check out my Soul Sand Elevator and my basic mechanics tutorials. But if this was any help to you, please check out my YouTube channel, Style Creations, and thanks for watching.